Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we're really fortunate to be able to spend some time with Beecher's Handmade Cheese. And today I'm really excited to be able to spend a little bit of time with Brian. And he is a American Cheese Society certified cheese professional, a certified cheese sensory analysis evaluator, and a cheesemonger to the 9th degree. So it's really exciting to be able to have somebody on that speaks our language, and we'll have a lot of fun. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian and let him get started here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian.
Hey, Michael Landis. Thank you so much for having me on. This is fantastic. My name is Brian Gilbert. I'm the head cheesemonger for Beecher's Handmade Cheese here in Seattle, Washington. Well, I did talk about Flagship a lot because it's our signature cheese, but Flagship is a cross between Cheddar and Gruyere. It's interesting when I teach our staff and I teach new cheesemongers, I like the word cross. I think our internal marketing, director of marketing, Julie, I think told me that 8 years ago when I came in. Use the word cross. She's probably listening to me, so if I get this wrong, Julie. The reason I say cross is because I think it offers the idea of intention. It's not a blend. We use the word blend for other things, but we had a reason, Kurt had a reason why he wanted to put those two cheeses together. Everything that I've mentioned up to now has like the nice little bit of tingly. Sharp is described by so many people so many different ways, but for me it has that little like acidic, sweet, tingly at the tip of my tongue, and that's what Flagship offers. Notes, as I mentioned a bit earlier, of brown butter. I love that, almost like a caramelized, should you say caramel or caramel? But that caramel taste and the sweetness of the milk. So I love this cheese. When people ask me at the counter every single day, what's your favorite? It's easy, I say Flagship. Now I have plenty of other favorite cheeses too, it depends on what day. But if you're asking me what Beecher's cheese, I usually, almost always, pick Flagship. So what did you pair it with, Michael?
Cheddar's and your cheese is always been a very easy cheese to pair with. But yep. I think one of the reasons is because it is so versatile. This is such a great cheese, having the flavors, because it's not just about having the tanginess that you get from a cheddar. You have that sweet nuttiness that you get from Gruyere. So it does have those attributes there. So there's a lot of diversity that you can do with it. And of course, melting, this is like the cake melt, you know. So, so what I did was I like to have a vehicle. I want to put it on something. So I chose the Effie's, their Corn Biscuits. And I love them because, they're just so light. They're so easy to work with. And a little wedge of the Flagship. And then this is Bonnie's Jams. And this is a red pepper jam. And it's got some heat to it. I love that, having a little bit of heat with this, and the simplicity of the corn cakes is just really, really nice, the biscuits. And I paired it up with the Key West. This is a Sunset Ale, and it is an amber ale, but being that it's a Floridian, you can see how light this amber ale is. And so I would say that even though they're saying it's an amber, I'm going to say that it's an amber like lager, not as much of an ale.
Yeah, yeah. It looks almost like the beer has a little bit of red on top and amber at the bottom. Oh, it might just be the angle of the camera. Yeah, that looks so refreshing.
It's cleaning, but there's that maltiness in there that you really need to add in for the pairing. Very nice. It's just really simple. Pairing they should be fun. They should be easy. You didn't have to worry. I mean, entertaining with cheese should be easy and simple, laborless. I mean, you cut open the cheese, you slice it up, and you put a spread with it.
It's so funny. People always ask, I know you get this, we all get this, especially in our industry. What do I do with that? And okay, I'm a smart aleck. Eat it. Just eat it. Now, I know the question they're asking, because I know, being a cheesemonger, being an expert in the cheese world as you are, as I want to say that you, the audience, the guests, the tourists, you are experts as well, because you know what you like. Our job is just to encourage you to try some things that maybe you haven't tried before. That's kind of how I look, as more of a kind of a herding monger, trying to get people to try different things. Once they do try different things, we see it on your face. You're like, oh, I don't like that, or wow, that was fantastic. And sometimes it's right in the middle. If it's right in the middle, it's like maybe that person hasn't experienced that sensation before. And then it's our job as, I'm only going to put experts in quotes for this one, experts, because we're trying to read facial expressions to say, well, I think they liked it, but I'm not sure. And they're like, oh, no way, off. I'm like, I'll dive in a little deeper. I'll go about 3 times before I lay off. But right before that, if you can find that sweet spot of like, wow, I guess I just never experienced that before. And then they light up, then we just go full throttle. Like, all right, try this, try this, try this. Now, granted, we can't really do that in the COVID world right now. And I know hopefully soon we'll be able to do the tastings in the tasting rooms and the cheesemonger tables again. But that's where we got to lean in even more and kind of just use our words and our descriptors. So, sorry, I went a little bit long there. I'm like,
No.
I go,
No
yeah. So I have a little taste pairing here too. You want me to go into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
go for it.
So I'm not sure how national this particular brand is yet. I know that about 5 years ago or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, I was at the Washington Artists and Cheesemakers Festival. We have about 700 people that will attend. Almost all the active cheesemakers will show up every year. Sadly, we couldn't have it this year as many other events. But next to me at that table, and my event, my setup looked much like this, was a jam and preserve maker. And Audra is the owner, and I might even have a picture of her, but not on a slide. I was gonna say, she makes the most amazing local jams here. What I love about her is she plays to the seasons. So if it's readily available, she will have that jam or preserver spread ready. Right now, we see her booths at all the farmers markets that are local here to Seattle. This one that I picked out was Pink Bartlett. It's one that we sell in the store at Pike Place Market. You can find it in almost all the local Whole Foods. I'm not sure again how national it is, but here's where you get to see us eat and you guys watch, but some of you hopefully have the cheeses, but if not, anything you have in your fridge that has a little bit of like, well, anything you like, try it. As I said, you're the expert too. But I'm gonna do the Pink Bartlett from Girl Meets Dirt, love the name, on Flagship. It just brings it out so much. A little bit of sweetness. Siri just went off. That was kind of funny. Anyways, it brings out, what I like about this particular jam is it's not too sweet. And I got flooded with sensations. It made the Flagship that I already love even more tasty. And if you can do that and enhance both, and both of the pairings create a new flavor, that's like a second level of enjoyment. Sometimes the pairings that we create and bring together, you can taste the cheese, you can taste the pairing. And they're separate and they don't offend each other. The ones that I almost always try to stay away from, obviously, are the ones that clash. So you start to learn what clashes and you just go, oh wow, man, I don't think that would taste good. Much like when you're going through a grocery store and you're walking along, you're like, num, 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 num. What do I want? You have an idea, you have a sense for it. And you have a sense for if you want a soft or a hard cheese and what you might like to go with that. So you can always begin with, as Michael said earlier, something very simple. But that's my Flagship pairing. It's so good. We have Flagship Reserve. All right, let's talk about Clothbound cheddars for a second, and then Michael will have his pairing. Flagship that we talked about before is a cross between a cheddar and a Gruyere. This is also a cross between a cheddar and Gruyere. Same exact recipe, same exact everything, except for the way that it's made. So this, although it doesn't sound very sexy, once we take it out of that block, we cryovac it. So cryovac is plastic. We cryovac it and we age it. We age it for about 1.5 years. This one, Flagship Reserve, is the cloth-bound traditional cheddar making style. We take this, we keep using the word truckle. Think of a wheel of cheese that's in a cylindrical shape. So not unlike when we're scooping those curds and we're pouring them into a square block. In this case, we're scooping those curds at the cheese making beginning and dumping them into a cylindrical truckle. We take that truckle, press it just like we do the others. But when we pull it out at our cheese aging facility, also here in Seattle, we just moved. It was about 6 miles. Now it's about 8 miles, maybe a little less, still about 7 miles from the cheese making facility is where we age all of our cheeses. It's our aging, well, we say aging cave, but let's say it's an aging room. It's a temperature controlled environment that we age all of our truckles in. What we do is we wrap that cheese wheel with cloth, we rub it with butter, and we age this particular one for 13 months. Now, what will happen when it's aged in an open air aged facility is it's going to start to grow different molds, like I talked about earlier, good molds. You have a scapulariopsis mold, or a lot of times you have to actually do some scientific, you always have to do scientific study to kind of figure out what exact molds are. But once we know they're safe, they're growing on the outside, then we have cheese mites within the facility that are eating those molds, and new molds will grow. Now that's a whole research rabbit hole that you can go down and have fun with. But we're talking about safe molds that are fun and give the cheese the flavor that it becomes over time. So we take that cheese out of the facility, wrap it in paper, put it in a box, and then it comes back to me or the person buying the cheese, the cheesemongers around the country, and they are gonna cut that wheel or truckle open. Now what I like to do is like this truckle, let's see if we have a picture of it. Actually, I have a picture right here. This is the full truckle here. This is a half or quarter, I guess, of one, because what we'll do is we'll pull that cheesecloth off, and I kind of dust it off, and you can see little strands are kind of falling off. People always say, well, is it okay to eat the rind? And I always say in general, in cheese, yes, if you like it, eat it. In this case, it's okay to eat it, but I don't like eating this rind too much because it doesn't taste like, it tastes like paper in a way, or string in a sense. So again, it's up to you, but the paste or the inside is what we're talking about. Now this cheese drops from the original Flagship about 12 to 14% moisture. So it's drier, it's more crumbly. It has a little bit more of a musky taste in my opinion, but it still carries all the attributes that Michael said a few minutes ago when he was talking about what he likes about Flagship. And I had the same feelings about Flagship. It has that, it's so versatile. Now I'm curious to see what Michael will have as far as this particular pairing, because this might be a little less versatile depending on the cheesemonger and their taste buds and what their audience is, because not everybody will like that muskiness and some people will love it even more. And that's where I encourage people to try things a little bit out of their comfort zone. So Flagship Reserve, aged about 13 months, or we like to say at least 13 months, but sometimes it'll go a little longer depending on if it's sold or if we're intentionally taking it longer. So there you go, Michael. What do you got?
This is a good example of the natural part of aging on the exterior of the rind, bringing out the earthiness. And I have to say that growing up in, as a kid in Iowa and then moving to Michigan, but in Iowa we had a root cellar, and you know, you go into that and it's earthy and dirt, and you smell the vegetables in there. And for me, that is a really wonderful reminiscent aroma that I remember and just love to that. So anytime that I get into these cheeses that have that rind on them that smells like you know, a root cellar, it's a beautiful smell. It really is to me. And so it translates into the cheese slightly. You know, when we look at the cheese like this, you know, we're talking about two different places. This is going to taste different than this end. So we're going to get a variation on there. Where here we have the sweetness and the real, what I'd consider what most people really enjoy, the creaminess, the buttery flavor. And then as we get closer to the end of rind, we start picking up a little bit of that earthiness. So you actually get two pieces of cheese with this. So in my world, I love earthy, and so these next two cheeses, they're my favorite. So I didn't want my vehicle to really get in the way with anything, so I'm using the Rustic Bakery. They're organic sourdough. You know, they're flatbreads, little crisp. So really simple. I didn't want it to be complicated. and then a little piece of the cheese. And then I wanted something fruity, but I wanted something that's got some earth to it. And so I went with a fig paste by Rutherford and Meyer. And you know, Rutherford and Meyer out of New Zealand, this is all fig paste, no funny stuff. It's all that. And I really love that it's got the earthiness, and the cheese really brings out more of the earth fig that you get than anything else. And I just really love that part. And I wanted to go with something light. And so I'm with the Big Wave. This is Kona Brewing, and this is their golden ale. And I have to tell you that I've been sampling this with the cheese, and the earthiness and the golden ale are absolutely fabulous together. So that's mine.
Nice, nice. Okay, I have, this is gonna be a quick and easy one. Like you, I wanted to keep it really simple. Many years ago, maybe 2015, I did the Cheesemonger Invitational that Adam puts on, the first West Coast one that we did. And I took this pairing to it. Actually, I did more with it. I used some apples as well. But I chose, we sell this in the Pike Place Market store, and I think in our airport store as well. You probably cannot get it nationally, but if you're visiting, it's a great one. It's a balsamic vinegar, but it has a touch of honey in it, right? And now it's not like you can't find that elsewhere. You can find it around, but this is from Bee Works. Robert is the owner. He's a bee farmer. He's a bee farmer that is in Bellingham, and that's north of Seattle by a few miles, by quite a few miles, a couple hours. And what I love how he tells the story, and I'll make this hopefully kind of quick. He likes to think, he takes a Modella, balsamic reduction, and he likes to think the fact that we reduce and make as humans this vinegar, and then the bees are creating the honey much in a similar way. I'm probably not telling that story very well, but just the fact that like two different species are creating something, and then, you know, Bee Works likes to think that there's putting it together. So it's really simple. It's a little bit sweet, of course, a little bit vinegary, of course. And I'm just gonna, for this, I'm just gonna dip it in here a little bit. It's really thick. Actually, I lost it. It's really thick. So I actually use this on everything from meats to fish to salads to ice cream, but we most use it for cheese. I'm gonna make a mess here, but just me. So I dip a little bit on, or I drizzle a little bit on, and that's one of those pairings that brings out the cheese and the accompaniment. It's great. I still get to enjoy the cheese, everything that Michael described, talking with my mouth open. So good. And so that's my pairing. I just love its simplicity, and it almost brightens the cheese up a little bit. It brightens different parts of it too, because even as I was talking and chewing, I noticed the top part of the cheese, or closest to the center of the cheese, tends to be, at least in my taste bud, a little bit more sweet. Does that make sense right there? And then as Michael was describing it, you almost have a whole different cheese by the time you get to the rind, because the rind is going to be a bit more earthy. And then with this pairing, I get a sweeter taste and a more earthy taste. And that's what I love about it. So I wanted to keep it kind of simple. So yeah, my flagship reserve pairing with Bee Works Nectar. So we already went through the how a cloth bound cheese comes to be. So let's go back to the beginning. We make here at Beecher's Flagship. Flagship is a cross between a Cheddar and a Gruyere. Now, if we introduce a different milk, a sheep's milk happens to be, oop, I hope I didn't turn that off. Sheep's milk happens to be my favorite types of cheeses. Or I'm sorry, I love sheep's milk cheeses is where I'm going with this. So mixing something that I love, that I work with every day, a recipe that is a cross between a Cheddar and a Gruyere, cow's milk, and then adding a little bit of sheep's milk, we'd say it's about 70% cow's milk and 30% sheep's milk. Sheep's milk, we don't have sheep that we take care of. We get our milk from local dairies. When sheep's milk you can actually freeze. So it's not something I like to brag about to the industry, but we do get our sheep's milk cheese here. It comes to us. We thaw it out. Doesn't disrupt the flavor that the sheep's milk will have. We're able to have the best of both worlds here in Seattle because you can watch them kind of getting it all together, mixing or blending. That's when I'll use the word blend, because we have a blend of two different milks, cow's milk and sheep's milk. And then we apply the cloth, as I mentioned earlier, rub it with butter, just like the reserve, the flagship reserve that we talked about. The thing is, this cheese is also aging in the same aging rooms or aging caves as the flagship reserve. So it's going to take on a lot of those vegetable, earthy notes, the muskiness that Michael and I were both talking about loving so much. And musky doesn't always seem like it's the best adjective, but I love, or descriptor, but I love that smell. I've grown up with it. It reminds me of childhood. It reminds me of learning about food. It reminds me of so many different things. So putting all of that together, you have cow's milk, sheep's milk, Clothbound, and it's kind of a chance we get to brag about winning Best of Show at the American Cheese Society several years ago. A lot of miles, we can keep going with that. But because it's such a unique and comfort food, and it takes you out of your boundary zone, and you get the best of both worlds watching it being made in Pike Place Market. It's aged about, or at least 16 months. So you have more of that crystallization going, but I wouldn't say it forms necessarily, depending on what piece you have, tyrosine crystal crunchy bites, but it does offer what a more mature cheese would offer, like that earthiness, and the flavors will pop, almost like a butterscotchy note is what I often describe it as. So it probably went a little longer than I needed to, because all you got to do is try it. And again, you're the experts, so you tell us what you like, and we're just going to pair up what we think are good companions. So Michael, what do you have as far as Flagsheep goes?
I have to say that Bass cheeses were probably one of the first unique cheese to my palate. When I was first learning cheese, somebody had brought this on, and I just fell in love with the sweetness and earthiness that you can get and complexity of a sheep's milk cheese. And I think that a lot of people are maybe hesitant to try a different milk. You know, both of us have probably somewhere along the line, somebody says, well, you know, I don't eat goat's milk cheese or sheep's milk because I don't like the taste of the animal. And it's like, you taste the animal when you taste cow's milk?
Right.
You know, so I think that's then a stigma that they've always had. But the richness that you get from the sheep's milk is beyond compare. It's just that buttery flavors just really come out. So it's like taking, my impression is it's taking the flagship and Ubering it up to a greater level of buttery richness, where without changing that earthiness flavor in there, that really, I think, adds to the character of this cheese. I love it. So again, you know, being that the really, to me, the shift is just more butter, I'm still sticking with the Rustic Bakery with the olive oil and sea gris, but what I'm changing up is the intensity of the fig. And this is a fig spread from the Perseverance Society. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is serious fig spread. I mean, it's no kid's game. It's real thick in its flavor. And you know, as much as I love figs, hey, they're so seasonal and hard to find. And then you got to cut them and all that. I open a container and I spread this and I'm done, you know? I really like it. So, and I'm staying with the same beer. It doesn't, you know, what the characteristic that you're going to get from these two, a little bit more butter, but this Golden Ale, man, it works great with both of them.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to do a little, not tangent, just comment. Like, I love to do things at home all the time. I've been with Beecher's a long time. It's my favorite brand. It's what I do. It's what I love. Then I started a little side project called Gilbert's Cheese Experience. So I get to do and play at home when I'm not using Beecher's cheeses. then what happens? I end up using Beecher's cheeses anyway. So one of my first events I did on my own with my own name brand was my friend Holly and I went to the kitchen of Julie at Firefly Kitchens here in Seattle and Ballard. Ballard is a section of Seattle where I live, about 6 miles north of the downtown area. And we were featuring Flagsheep. So we've talked about Flagsheep a bit. And she makes all kinds of krauts and kimchis and just cabbage things. And Julie's fantastic. Her product's amazing. We use her actual kimchi on our grilled cheese sandwiches at all of our stores. So you can get a kimchi sandwich on Flagship and Jack and whole wheat bread from Grand Central. So that's what we do at our Beecher's cafes. So we were going down the line and we wanted to kind of keep in line with matching up colors. It's green, it's Emerald City. It's very well branded for Seattle, the Emerald City, and it's kraut. This kraut is amazing. And it's even more amazing with Flagsheep. So as simple as it is, let's see if I cannot make a mess. Take a little kraut, I'm gonna put it right on there. I was surprised that the kraut didn't overpower the cheese itself, but it was like a perfect pairing. One of those that I mentioned earlier, where if you have your accompaniment and your cheese and it is separate, that's good. But if it forms a new flavor, that's amazing. So let's see. It's so fresh. It's amazing. That's my pairing.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Oh my God, that's so good. For your Flagship. So out in the audience there, you're never supposed to do what the DJ tells you to do, but everybody that loves extra sharp, extra aged cheeses, raise your hand. Okay, I'm gonna raise my hand. For your Flagship. Doesn't sound very complicated because it's not. We have Flagship, again, back at the base, cross between a Cheddar and Gruyere. And you age it 2.5 years or longer or more, you have 4-year Flagship. Well, is it that different is the question I get all the time. Yeah, it's very different. And that's what's amazing about cheese and bacterias and what they're doing. And as I mentioned early on, when we first started, if you manipulate the milk and give the cheese, once you've made it, the right environment to allow those bacteria to thrive, you're gonna come up with all different kinds of flavors, some good, some not so good. Our job, and I'll say our job as cheese makers, is to control that and make notes and pay attention and be a chemist and also be an artist and put all those things together. It turns out this particular cross of Cheddar and Gruyere styles keeps tasting better when it's aged longer. Now, I mentioned a couple times, everybody always asks for those crunchy bites that you get in cheeses. And you could talk about it a couple different ways. You could say tyrosine crystals or tyrosine crystals, which are basically amino acids that are unraveling and you're biting into them. And I'm not the scientist, so when I say that, my scientist buddies will say, hey, it's not exactly that. We could talk about the calcium lactate that's on the outside, which would taste and look almost identical depending on where it is. You probably need a microscope to actually tell the difference between the two, as Paul, our dairy scientist here at Beecher, says. But nonetheless, the texture is amazing and we love them for some reason. Years ago, those crunchy bites, or at least as I've read in many books and colleagues talked to, used to be considered a defect. Nowadays, I think I know it's considered something that is award-winning. So that said, Flagship, when it's aged longer, in my opinion, in the signs that I've written for the cheese case at our cheese shops, I like to say it has a pineapple-y note to it or a tropical fruit note to it. As it ages longer, it gets a little bit sweeter. A little goes a long way. It's crazy amazing. I don't always want a lot of it though, and honestly, I don't always want cheeses to be that rich. But when I'm in the mood for it and I need strength, and I want that fruitiness, 4-year Flagship is, or extra aged Flagship, aged at 4 years, is amazing. And before you go into your pairing, Michael, my story is, and this is true, at the cheese counter, I tell it almost every time I sell a piece of cheese, which is a lot. So my coworkers are like, enough. But when I first started at Beecher's about 8 years ago, I was at the cheese counter and I bought a bunch of them because we didn't have it all year round. and I bought 12 or 13 of them, I think, something like that. I remember it was over $100, whatever I bought. And I've eaten most of those or gifted most of those, but I have one left, and it's about, well, it's at least 12 years old. This was 4 years when I bought it and 8 years added to that. But we always say at least, but sometimes it's more. I think it's about 14 years aged. It looks good. It's been in my fridge. I have duct tape wrapped around it. It says do not eat. So let's see how long it lasts. But for now, we'll talk about 4-year flagship. So that's my 4-year story. What did you got? What kind of pairing you got with it?
You know, I love that. That's really cool. There's a lot of times, you know, one of our questions that we get a lot is, how long can I keep this cheese? And
Yep.
well, you
How
know,
long you got?
buy it and eat it, because generally it's available. What you get is ready to serve, and you should eat it all and buy fresh. But,
Right.
you know, I had Marike on the other day, and she was talking about, you know, cheese doesn't expire, you know.
Yes, thank you.
Does not expire.
Doesn't expire.
You just, you know, you either eat the mold on it or you scrape the mold off, but it's just going to get better generally. But, you know, a lot of people, they are so used to everything that has to have an expiration to it. And cheese is the exception to the rule. And, you know, both of us know, studying for the CCP exam, looking at the cheeses from 2,000 years ago, and no refrigeration until 1940. So, you know, how did they not?
Right.
You know, how are they able to survive and enjoy cheese without that? You know, and that's the point, is that these cheeses are able to withstand the test of time. And, you know, working with some cheesemakers where I have in my refrigerator some 14, 15, and 16-year-old cheeses that are labeled at that have been in there for a couple years already. That'll be, you know, when I get around to them, or gift them, or whatever. I just gifted for a friend of mine a 15-year cheddar for her 50th birthday. So, you know.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
Well, you know, as we get into these extra aged cheeses, we do pick up that tanginess, that lemon lime flavor. So the intensity really jumps up. But I think that sea salt caramel, you know, that whole thing with salty and that is the direction that I decided to go here. And so I went with the Effies, and this is their cocoa biscuits with coconut to them, in addition to the chocolate, the cocoa in here. And so a nice, I like that for this one. I really want a good sized piece of cheese, because this has got so much flavor, and I really want every single bite to be big. And so I picked up the Fat Toad Farm, and this is their caramel with spicy dark chocolate. And, you know, I just thought, you know, that would be so much fun, and the richness, the tanginess, and that. And I would complement that with a local beer. This is Cigar City Brewing here in Tampa, and this is their Maduro Brown. So it's a brown ale. So kind of just amplifying all the maltiness that you get from here.
Nice. Like I think a lot of times people ask us what we how to taste. A lot of times when I do an event, I'll do a how to taste. We all do it a little bit differently, but basically, as I go into my pairing with this, and I'm going to keep this one simple. I'll talk about the pairing in just a second, but let's talk about how to pair. A lot of people ask that. Aroma falls. So typically I like to hold the cheese up. I'm exaggerating this too. You don't have to do this at home, but hold the cheese up a little bit higher and breathe in. You can get all of the aromas of the cheese. If you had seen Michael or myself or any of the people taking the test at the CCSE survey evaluating, we're always doing that. We're trying to clear our sinuses and our nose and take a nice breathe in. If you breathe in, get all the sensations for it. So when you go to take your tasting, and actually before I go, let me pause for a second and talk about what I'm pairing with. I chose Woodenville whiskey, bourbon straight whiskey. It's about 90 proof. Woodenville is a few miles outside of Seattle, and amazing they do amazing stuff. It's really simple. They do a nice rye. They do a double cask whiskey. They do a straight bourbon whiskey. They have a few others. This is one of my favorites because you can get it. You definitely can get it nationwide. Costco seems to have it as well. And they're still local and they just do a fantastic job. So what I love about bourbon in particular, and Michael had a bourbon webinar the other day with Gouda and Marike. And I believe you said you were doing another one. Is that true? Coming up later tomorrow?
Yes, I have 2 more. And
okay.
tomorrow will be another one with blue cheese. But I have on my YouTube channel, the instructions on how to taste bourbon with the Kentucky Chew method.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go in the Kentucky Chew method. I'm just going to do what I do here, and it may be the same. I'm not sure. What I love about bourbon so much is the mash bill has to be 51% or more to be called bourbon of corn. And corn has that sweetness to it. And that's what I love about it. So there's obviously a wide variety of bourbons out there, some fantastic, some not so great. But when you get into your quality bourbons, which this is as well, and also very local to Seattle area, the greater Seattle area anyways, you just have everything that we talked about. Cheese, we could go down. Michael's an expert in spirits and wine as well, and he could, I'm always learning so much from everything that he knows. But what I love about this is it has all the nuances that we described in cheese. So if you put those two together and you come up with something amazing, it's even more amazing. So Woodenville whiskey, straight bourbon, amazing. That's the accompaniment. Now, as far as getting back to how to taste, as I stop there for a moment, hold the cheese up high, take a nice whiff, take a bite, cover it on all the parts of your mouth, cheeks, the roof of your mouth if you can, tongue, below the tongue, everything you can. Take a sip. Now, as Michael did with his pairing, I like to take a nice beefy bite. We have a lot to go on. Talking at the same time, probably not the best thing. Then take a little sip of whiskey. That's amazing. And as I take a bite, I created almost a paste. Swallow and breathe out. And breathing out, it's going to bring a whole nother range of aromas and tastes and flavors through your olfactory sensories that you wouldn't have even known existed. So don't just swallow. Swallow after you've coated every part of your mouth and then breathe out. You'll have an experience like no other. That was really good. Plus, it's 1, 2 o'clock here, and I have my bourbon, and that's nice. That's my pairing.
Wow. Yeah. Outstanding.
That's so good. That's what I wanted right now. That's so good.
Well, you'll have to join us tomorrow. For
our yes. There's a running theme here, Flagship. I've said it a bunch of times, cross between a Cheddar and a Gruyere, because I like to kind of pound home the fact that those two cheeses assembled together and then manipulated different ways, you can have entirely different cheeses, even though you have a base. And most cheese companies will do that. They have their signature cheese, and then they can manipulate it different ways to get different styles. They can put it in big or smaller formats. They can add ingredients. They can take out ingredients. They can add things like peppercorns, or in our case, we have Marco Polo is a cheese that has milled green and black peppercorns. We have another cheese that called New Woman, which has Jamaican jerk seasoning. So we have some flavored fun ones. And this one, for those of you that like smoked, or let me rephrase that, for those of you that do not like smoked, this is a cheese you might actually enjoy because, and this is what I think, unscientifically, that the smoking that we use is smoked with cherry wood and apple wood. So you tend to have a sweeter note to it. Now the ends sometimes, depending on where the cheese is cut, can be a little bit stronger, like the heel of any cheese. Of any cheese. But this one tends to be more mild to the palate for a lot of people that really just don't enjoy smoking. And for those that love smoked cheeses, this is amazing because it hits all those different properties that we love. Yeah, it's a lot of people that like smoked Goudas or Goudas find that this when they come into our cheese shop is something that they'll enjoy, although the texture is different, of course, from a Gouda and Cheddar Gruyere style, but the flavor is reminiscent of what it is that they know. And that's a big part of when we talk about what is it, why are you here? What are you here for? What are you trying to get? A big thing that when people are cheese shopping are asking for, in my experience, is they're either going with something that's nostalgic to them, something that they remember, or they might be coming in for a particular milk type because they're for dietary purposes or their personal preferences, or it's just they like the name, like Manchego or Parm or Brie. They're very limited to what they know. So like I said, kind of as a running theme, anytime you can get the cheese into the mouths of somebody to try something new, they experience something they've never experienced before. So smoked flagship, and I'm not even a huge smoked cheese fan in general. I love this one. So there's the smoked flagship. What do you have to pair with it, Michael?
You know, smokiness to me is meatiness. You know, having the meat flavor that you get from it, having Southern barbecue or Texan barbecue, anything like that, very reminiscent from that. And this does have a really nice sweetness. It is, I would say, kind of like a Carolina sweet sauce, you know.
Yeah.
The tanginess to it. It's got the smokiness. It's got all those things on there. And so, you know, for me, I wanted to build this into like the dinner portion of it. So I'm using the brewer's crackers, and this is a sea salt. These are actually spent grains. So it's pretty dense, it's heavy, and it's got a lot of sea salt to it. And then a piece of cheese. And then I really wanted to go with something that added a little bit of flavor. And so this is the Three Little Pigs. This is their version of a Provence herbs on their charcuterie. And then to give it just a little bit of kick, they also do a ground mustard. And so
nice.
A little bit of ground mustard on this with the charcuterie, with the smoked cheese, and with the biscuit. And then pairing this up with one of your local breweries. This is Pyramid, and I happen to have some Snow Cap from last year. Cool. You know, a little high octane to go with this.
Nice. Oh, that's really fantastic. It's kind of nice when you can hit the trifecta of three different things. Like you said, you like your cheese to be on something, and then the beverage afterward kind of gives it just more opportunities to have crazy good flavor. I kept it simple here too. You talked about the meatiness of it, which is exactly what smoked cheeses will offer. So I went the opposite route and went for the same company I talked about, Robert in Bellingham, that has Bee Works Nectar. They also have honeycomb. Let me see if I can just pick this up, because it'll be way more descriptive. The honeycomb itself, amazing. A lot of people come in. I don't even know how we sell these so fast every single day. All it is honey in the honeycomb itself. So I take a nice little slice of it. I do recommend not chewing it right off the top, because you'll get all of the honeycomb stuck in your teeth. So what I do is I eat it like a piece of candy. I suck on it for a little bit. So for the tasting, I would put some in my mouth, suck on the honeycomb, get a little bit of the honey out, and then I'll have a little bit of cheese right after that. And then I'll mix it together in my mouth a little bit, swallow and breathe out. Same thing, same setup. So I'm not going to do this one right now because I know it's going to get stuck in my teeth and I won't be able to talk. So I'm going to hang on to that. But it is an amazing pairing that I love. And again, it's showing off Robert, his work with the bees. I get to tell that story every single time somebody buys one, or even if they don't, I'm usually chatting about it at the counter. Then I might go into the balsamic honey. And my goal isn't, it's a saying I heard from a YouTuber years ago on a TED talk that said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, Simon Sinek. And I kind of followed that quite a bit during the time. I loved giving people and still love giving people the experience. Talking about some of these products that Michael has and that I have here, give us an opportunity to connect with the guests. And the experience, as I mentioned earlier, is what they get, the commodity, whatever they take home with them is a reminder of that experience. Not to lessen in any way everything that happens before it. The product itself has to be good. And that's what we're trying to do here at Beecher's for all the flagship cheese, for the experience you get. If you visit the farms, if you have kids or yourself have gone through the Beecher's Foundation programs, that's a big part of what we're doing. So, and I have fun with these cheeses every single day.
I have to say that this has been exceptional. Just being able to spend a little bit of time with you, Brian, and listen to you and pick up the little notes and things about each of the cheeses. I want to thank you for taking the time, but also I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that you'd like to say for us to take with us at the end?
Keep experimenting. Like, that's the thing. Remember also, especially in the time that we're going through right now with, hopefully we're all coming closer together. I know there's a lot of things that are going out during this time of quarantine. You have time. A lot of us have our story during this time. And I have some of my personal stories that weren't also great in March when a lot of this pandemic started coming around. The good side of all of that is everybody's happy and healthy right now. And I was able to like open up and do new things that I've never been able to do with Beecher's. We were all furloughed for a little bit. We weren't sure what was going to happen. I came back about a month and a half ago, so I had quite a bit of time off. And my time off was rebuilding myself and learning more, growing my own personal business, growing, tasting, experimenting, climbing mountains. My friend Mickey and I went and did a mountain climb a couple weeks ago to Mount St. Helens, climbed to the top, went and visited a local monument. We brought cheese and salmon and whiskey all along the way. So what I'm saying here is I encourage you to try cheeses, try new foods, experiment, do some things you wouldn't have normally done. This is a great time to do it. I know not everybody can, and they're going through some challenges, but the hope and the excitement of doing that is what I try to do when a customer comes in the door at Beecher's, or whether I'm doing an event on my own. I get a chance to connect with people all the time, and we're all at different stages, and we can help each other out and go forward. Food for me, as a food educator, as a cheesemonger, as a lover of spirits and all the different worlds, is I get a chance to tap into and get excited about what these cheesemakers and food makers and producers are doing. So I ask you to support them. And it's not always about the deals, so long as you can afford it and you have the moment, or maybe it's a treat once in a while, but try some of those cheeses in the cheese case you would have never tried before. Even if you don't love it afterward, maybe you can gift it to somebody. If you take a bite and you're like, it's really not for me, but take some of those chances and have fun along your journey. You can always contact Michael or myself. Pretty much all of our information is all over the internet in different ways. You just punch our names in and punch cheese up and we'll come up. And what I found too is in our community, and I could name 100 names, all the people that Michael has interviewed and done webinars with, and myself included, it's a good local tight-knit community that expands out to all of you. So what we want to do is just empower you to be the experts on your own, learn, have fun, thrive, grow, and enjoy what it is that you're doing. So we believe that if you take care of Mother Earth and what we're doing here, we'll be happier, healthier, and just be more accomplished in what it is that we do. So that's my after school special take home note. But truly, thank you everybody, appreciate it.
That was perfect, thank you. And it's always fun to be able to turn somebody on to a new cheese that that they get to be able to try, become their new favorite cheese. And the most important thing that I think we can say overall is that when they buy your cheese, they're not only just buying from Beecher's, but they're supporting the farms, the families, and the community along the way, and being able to support other functions along the way. And I want to thank you for your dedication to the craft, and how much fun you make it, and you really do make a difference in our world. And I sincerely appreciate the effort and work that you do, Brian.
Likewise, Michael, I very much appreciate being able to be part of this. This is amazing. I've been watching them. I'm like, I want to do that. And then it came about. So there you go.
Well, you know, what was funny is I look down at the clock and I'm like, yeah, we run a little bit over. But it's
Oh, wow.
really funny is that both of us have been asked to teach somewhere and they say, okay, so what can you teach in 10 minutes?
Oh my God, I know, right?
Hello? You know? So, taking an hour and 15 minutes is a very comfortable direction to be able to
Yeah,
scratch the surface of
yeah.
this direction. So I appreciate that you went the extra effort to give us the quality of the information along with being able to entertain us along the way. So thank you.
Likewise. I hope my mom was trying to connect right before so I could say, hi, Mom. I wonder if she caught it live. If not, I'm like, don't worry, it's being recorded. So it's being recorded. So for those of you that have missed it, it'll be available, right, Michael?
Yes, it will. It'll be on my YouTube channel, Michael Landis Cheese. And unfortunately, we just lost you, but that's okay because we're going to say goodnight now. And I'll have this up in just a couple days. All righty. For everybody else, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us. We certainly appreciate it. Keep in mind that almost every week there's something going on 4 o'clock. So you can check with Michael Landis Cheese. You can go on my website. You can go on my Facebook, or you can go on Michael Landis Cheese, my YouTube channel. So thank you so much, and have a great night. Be careful, wash your hands, wear a mask, and we'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.